Mastering a two-thread overlock stitch will serve you well as you learn your new Bernette 64 or Bernette 68 airlock serger. Hi, I'm Sarah from sewingmastery.com, where we're doing all the free video tutorials on this series of machines, including cover stitch and 5-thread overlock stitches, and why we would even use the stitches. There is a link to the complete playlist of all the tutorials in the order we recommend that you watch them, from opening the box, seeing what comes with it with accessories, and if you are exploring buying one of these sergers, watch these tutorials first and get an idea of which of the models would be right for you. So when we talk about using only 2 threads, we're talking about using one needle, so you can either have the right one or the left one depending on how wide you want your stitch. And then we're always using only the lower looper, so that would be the red thread or the red tension disc. The magic happens when you attach the 2-thread converter. And on this Bernette, I can't wait to show you where it is stored and how easily accessible it is whenever you want to do this stitch. But before we get into setting this up, I want to show you an example of what a 2-thread rolled hem looks like. So I had a project that I was wanting to add this ribbon, and it's just a sheer ribbon. But what I wanted to do was have a certain color to coordinate with some other items on the edge. So of course I can't just walk into the store and find this perfect green olivey color that matched. What I actually did was serged the 2-thread rolled hem on both sides of the ribbon. Yep, I did a whole entire extra spool than what I needed. I actually think I did 2 spools, and it actually turned out just perfect. I chose not to cut anything off, though I left my knife in place, and that's a trick that I never take my knife off or disengage it when I don't want to cut, but I used it as a visual guide. So as I ran this ribbon down beside the knife, I knew exactly how close I could run it, so my stitch always caught the right amount of this sheer ribbon. Once I finished one side, I turned it around and stitched with the 2-thread all the way back. So there's 2 things. Number one, it's a very delicate stitch, so it's actually, because it's not 3 threads, it's only 2 threads. There's 1 thread on a traditional rolled hem that you never see. It's always tucked on the back side. So when I don't need to have that even showing, why am I even using it in the first place? When you can do a 2-thread rolled hem, I bet you do that more often than you think, than just doing a traditional 3-thread rolled hem. So it's more of a wrap, if I might describe it slightly different. The one needle and the lower looper allows the thread to wrap from the back side all the way to the front side as it's being caught and connected with the needle. If we were selecting to use a outside needle or the left needle, now that wrap is going to be much wider, which is excellent, for example, on flannel blankets or even fleece items. So I'm going to actually show you how to set this up for both the narrow, which again, so perfect for lightweight fabrics, but napkins, any place that you'd use a rolled hem, use it with a 2-thread instead. It's so much easier. And then I'm going to switch the needle to be the wide version with some decorative thread. And let's talk decorative threads too, because these decorative threads will be going through the lower looper. Remember, just the red one. The blue one is going to be the one that doesn't have any thread in it. We can choose something a little bit thicker or fluffier, something that will fill in that edge, especially if you're wanting to look nice and solid. This happens to be something along the line of like a woolly nylon. That's why it was stretching when I was touching it. This also kind of fluffs up once it comes back, so it fills in very nicely. For those of you who might want to experiment with thread that's almost a little bit more like a thin rope, Aurifil makes a 12-weight 2-ply thread that I think you'll really like putting through your serger looper. And of course, if you want to just be ritzy and glitzy, reach for a spool of Razzle Dazzle by Ricky Timms. This is one of my go-tos because all the colors and all the pretty shininess really puts a nice edge. Now this is usually a little bit bumpy, so nothing that's going to be like next to your skin, like for the edge of napkins. It might be just a little scratchier than what you'd want right next to your face. But if you're attracted to the shiny and the glittery colors, you're going to love using this thread in your serger for decorative stitches. If you've printed off the sheet that has all the stitches on it, we're going to be working with stitch number 13, the 2-thread rolled hem. And so you're going to see which tensions we're going to use. We're going to use the green one, and we'll set it at 5. This is the 2-thread converter that we'll put where the upper looper is. 4.5 will be for the lower looper tension, and we are going to switch the serger to rolled hem and shorten the stitch length. That should get us started. There's a link to this in the description below, along with the free workbooks that you can print off depending on which of these Bernette models you actually own, and they'll give you something to kind of put your samples that you're making as you follow along with these tutorials, so you have a better understanding of how to do the stitch because you've actually done it yourself. I'm going to start by just clipping the yellow thread down here at the needle and removing that thread. Remember, take off the thread from the machine that you are not using any longer, and let's go ahead and take that needle out. I like to use the needle threader. Remember, on the end there's a little hole so that can catch it as it is loosened. The screw you're loosening is the top one. Give it a little loosen, little wiggle, tighten up that screw so it doesn't wiggle loose, and then this needle can be stored in the little pin cushion off to the side of the serger next to the lower looper cone. Next, I'm going to remove the blue thread or the upper looper thread. I'm going to open the door and just cut it right here near the air tube, and then also remove it from the serger and take the cone off the machine. If you don't, what's going to happen is sometimes those loose threads will come back in with their friends and they will, well, cause a little havoc a little later. If you want, lift up your presser foot and just pull on the threads to kind of disengage any of the threads we've already cut. So right now I just have 2 threads in the serger. Here is the 2-thread converter. I love the little place that they have for it to store. It just kind of clips on to this little post, and so when you're done you'll just put it back in, and that's where it will live, so you never lose it. It is kind of a funny shape, so let's just come a little bit closer to where it's going to hook into place, and I'll show you how we attach it. Right now the lower looper thread is kind of over the area I want to be, so I'm going to just move it into kind of down in this area where it can hang, and we can start from it at that position. To do a 2-thread, the serger needs to think that there is thread in the upper looper. So as we position it, and as I hold it really close, you can kind of see what is going to line up. We're just going to take this. It's kind of got a little kind of over the edge there. And then at the back here, your 2-thread converter is going to come in and sit in the hole of the upper looper. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead, serge a 2-thread rolled hem. Then I'm going to show you up close how the threads actually work when that 2-thread converter is in place. Set the green tension to 5, the red tension to 4.5, and pull the stitch finger out towards you so it's at the rolled hem setting. Let's just start here and see how it looks. Since I left the stitch length at 2.5, it just kind of quickly ran down the edge of the fabric. We do see that it rolled the fabric, but instead of seeing our normal upper looper thread, which is blue, we are seeing the lower looper thread, which is red, and the right needle. Let's shorten the stitch length closer to 1 and repeat. I like the way that it looks, but I can tell that it's a little uneven. If you've watched our cutting width and stitch length video, you'll know that that means that there's too much fabric that it's trying to roll, and so it's kind of like spreading out. It's not being nice and even. So I'm going to turn the knife so it is going to be closer to the needle, cutting off a little bit more fabric. Those stitches are much more even, and I like that result. Let me show you up close and personal of how that two-thread converter is helping the red thread or the lower looper thread get pulled up around the top and connecting with our needle. So as it's coming down, it is picking up the lower looper thread and bringing it for the needle to catch, allowing the lower looper to be seen on both sides of the fabric and creating a much lighter weight looking stitch. We're going to switch to a thicker thread, a decorative thread, and I'm going to show you how you can tie on, pull through, and how to adjust the tensions for a thread that's not just a normal weight. Let's start with that woolly nylon, which I'm going to replace and put it on the lower looper. I like to start by lifting up my presser foot, pulling on the little chain that's going on, clipping it so I can remove that extra thread that's not supposed to be there. And to tie on, I'm going to show you the easiest knot to actually do for pulling through a new thread that's thicker and decorative. I like to tie on because it doesn't go through the air jet threading sometimes because it's too thick, it's too chunky. So by tying on, we can just pull it through by the thread that's already on there. Now, if you've already removed thread from the serger and then you're like, oh no, I wanted to switch over to decorative thread, I would recommend just putting normal thread back on, shooting it through the air tubes, and then doing what I'm doing now, clipping it and tying on. Put the two tails together, and sometimes I describe this as tying a balloon knot. So if you've tied a balloon in your past, you can do this simple knot, and it's guaranteed not to come out. If you've got a little extra tail, you could cut this, or you can just pull it right on through. If your presser foot is up, that will make pulling this through super easy. And here is our knot. We are now threaded with a decorative thread. Now, since the serger doesn't know that this thread is any thicker than what you had in it before, what I recommend that you do is lower the tension, maybe 1 to 2 numbers, to give this area a little breathing room. Otherwise, it's going to be much tighter than it should be for doing your 2-thread rolled hem. Don't forget to lower down your presser foot and start to stitch. Isn't that a pretty stitch? The same color on both sides. So what if we wanted this wider? Start by pushing the stitch finger back in, and now I'm going to switch from using the inside right needle to using the outside left needle. Now, just a little trick. You cannot just leave your green thread in the serger and put it through the left needle. You actually need to be in the yellow tension, the left needle tension, because these are actually different. So that I have seen that be an issue. I've had people come in and wondering why things weren't working. Well, they had their right needle tension threaded, but then put it in their left needle. So that is a no-no. So I always say, take out the thread that you know you're not using. Put on the thread that you know is supposed to be there, then switch your needles around. If you're a newbie, I would also recommend putting your needle in next to the one you have in there now, then removing this inside needle. This allows you to not only have a reference point of where that needle needs to slide up, see how easy that is, but it also allows you that once you take your screw, loosen it, and slide your needle to the highest position and tighten it, you can look to see that that left needle is higher than the right needle before you take it out. So if you only take the right one and switch it over, you don't have that double check. And being a new serger owner, that could be just what you need to make sure that everything is placed where it should be and your needles get up to the highest point. We do have a video where we teach you exactly how to use the needle threader. So if you have not mastered that yet, watch that video and learn how wonderful your needle threader works. I'm going to start with a little longer stitch since this is going to be on 2 layers of fleece, and just to see how it's going to look and what we need to change once we get started. Classic mistake. When I threaded this, I did not make sure my thread got all the way deep enough into the tension. So I'm going to give it a little pull, tug it back in, and you can see it has lots of yellow showing here. So let's just do a quick little redo. Yes, it can happen to anybody. That's what you're supposed to see on the back. I love that this is just like one complete wrap of the thread. Let's shorten that stitch length to see how we can turn this into a beautiful satin stitch along the edge of 2 pieces of fleece. Wow, that is stunning and super, super soft. That's that woolly nylon thread, so look for that if you want to create a 2-thread edge like this. If this video has been helpful and now you know how to use a 2-thread converter, click the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can help you with additional amazing sewing, serging, and embroidery features in the future. If you're looking for all the tutorials on these beautiful sergers, there's a link to the complete playlist in the description below or right here at the end of the video.